any of the children, you are welcome to go. And I realize I forgot to introduce myself. I think everyone here knows who I am, but if someone's watching online or someone doesn't, if you're like me and you forget easily, I'm Kurt Wise. And it's always it's a pleasure to be able to preach here. I'm happy to be back here this morning. We live in a land of laws, right? We have all sorts of rules. We have rules from a federal level. We have rules from a state level. We have rules, county rules. We have church rules. We have home rules. We have rules, school rules, work rules. Everywhere we go, there's rules and there's laws. And some of them make sense to us, and some of them are like, what in the world? Where did that come from? Where did that rule originate from? Because they seem crazy. For instance, did you know it is illegal in Marshalltown to allow your horse to eat a fire hydrant? Right? What in the world? It's against the law to use a deceased person's handicap parking permit. It's against the law to pass off margarine or oleo as butter. Right? You can't do that now. It's actually against the law to throw a snowball in Davenport. And it's against the law to wink at a woman you don't know in Ottumwa. Right? It's like, where do these come from? We have all sorts of laws, and they had good intentions, right? All these laws probably came about because either somebody got hurt or some property was destroyed. And so we're like, we don't want that to happen again. So let's make a law. Let's try to keep some order to all of this. But then, times and circumstances change, and fire hydrants are no longer made out of wood, so it's not too likely that a horse would eat them. Not that any of us are taking a horse to town either, right? But sometimes there's these rules, and you just wonder why. This last week, I discovered that I wasted $2,000 because the parking lot in our store, the lines were getting pretty faded in our parking lot. In fact, we would joke that people in Kelowna, we just say a lot of them never went to kindergarten. Why do we say it? Because in kindergarten, you learn to stay between the lines, right? You're given a piece of paper and a crayon, and you learn to color in the lines. And we look out at a parking lot, and it's like, well, they didn't go to kindergarten because they can't stay between the lines, right? And so our lines were getting faded. So I hired someone to come in and repaint them. And they repainted them, and I went out to check them out. The guy, he was still in the parking lot. He hadn't even left yet. And let's see, if I turn this on, we're going to get there. This is what I found. There were 3 cars in the parking lot, only 3. Every one of them was parked on top of the lines. I blanked out the license plate so that if you're admitting it, that's okay. I didn't want anyone to get in trouble here, right? But I just laughed. I had what a waste of my money. Why did I even bother to redo my parking lot if we can't park between the lines? And these aren't laws, right? But they're not really intended suggestions. There's a reason that we have them. And the reason for those lines is that we can get the most cars into the space, and it still allows people to get in and out of their car without damaging the car beside you. It allows the people beside you to get in and out of their car without door dinging yours. And it also allows all of us to come and go as we want. I mean, we could put more cars in if we didn't have lines. We could just pack them all in, but then you couldn't get out when you wanted because there'd be a car in front of you or behind you, which still happens sometimes when people park like this. You can't get out because people park wherever. And so, we look at this and we say, well, what's the reason? And it's the same thing in front of my store. We have a no parking area. And every day people will park there. And it's not the same person because we hate a law or a rule that inconveniences us. Right? Now, we have a reason for having the no parking. We have 2 reasons for having this no parking area right in front of the store. The first is because if someone parks there, especially with a taller vehicle, and someone else is walking out, you are walking out and suddenly you are right in traffic and you can't see what cars are there. We don't want anyone to get run over. The other reason is because probably once a year, we have to call 911 for a medical emergency. And we want that area clear so that the first responders, the ambulance, can get right there as quickly as possible. And so we always want people to not park right there. But in my mind, we're looking, well, that's stupid. That's a great place to park. Maybe you aren't that way, but I'm that way. I want to park where I want, when I want. And I look at the rules and I go, well, that's stupid. I'm not going to be here that long, right? If it inconveniences me, then it doesn't apply to me. That's my mindset. And so I want to do what I want when. And if I want to throw a snowball in Davenport, I want to throw a snowball in Davenport. And if I want to wink at a woman in Natumwa, I'm not going to do that because I'm happily married. Right? Yeah, you thought, no, I'm not winking at a woman in Natumwa. Not because of the rules, though. Not because of the rules. But sometimes we look at the Bible and we think it's a rule book, right? We think this book is just full of rules, and why do I want to do that? Inconveniences me. I don't want to follow all those rules. And it does have a lot of rules in it. I mean, the book of Leviticus, right? It's just all this law stuff that doesn't make any sense to us. And it spills over, doesn't even fit in Leviticus. It spills over in the Numbers, and it spills into Deuteronomy. And we've been going through, I know 2 weeks ago I preached out of Deuteronomy. Last week Josh preached again. He preached about the serpent. And so we have all of these laws. But you wonder why. You think about this group of Israelites coming up out of Egypt. They had been slaves for centuries, right? Their parents had been slaves, their grandparents, their great-grandparents, their great-great-grandparents. The same amount of time has passed as the Israelites being in captivity as from the time that the Mayflower landed at Plymouth Rock till now. Within a few years, it's the same amount of time. Think about that span of time. None of us remember what it was like in the old country where the pilgrims came from. Right? These people didn't know what it was like back where Jacob and Isaac, where they had come from. They had no recollection. Maybe they'd heard stories, but they hadn't experienced it. It's a long time. We don't even consider ourselves to be German or English or Italian or Spanish or French anymore. We consider ourselves to be Americans. We have taken on this identity in the 400 years. And I think that the Israelites had kind of done the same thing. This 400 years in Egypt, they had taken on this identity of slavery. And then God brought them out, and they didn't even know how to act. They didn't know what to do. They had never been a free people. And so God gave them this series of laws. He gave them this book. There's like 600 and some laws, if you want to go through and count them. 250 of those are positive laws. Do this, right? Things we're supposed to do. About 350 are negative laws. Don't do this. And so we get this, do this, don't do this, all of these things. And my sermon this morning is based on the passage that we read, Deuteronomy 32, 42 to 48, or 47, whatever. And I'm calling it Rescue, Rules, and Relationship. And so these 600 rules that are in the Bible, who do they apply to? Right? What's the point of them? And even if, let's just boil them down to make it a little easier to comprehend, to the 10 Commandments. Right? Who should follow those? I mean, they're a great basis for society, right? I mean, is there anything in the 10 Commandments that's objectionable? But yet, you cannot legislate morality. And we have the 10 Commandments. There's been debate over the last decade or so about whether they belong in the courthouse, whether they belong in schools. That might be more than the last decade. But there's been debates on what do we do with these as a society that's not Christian, because you can't legislate morality. It just doesn't work. You can give rules, and it can help people stay moral, but you can't make an immoral person to be moral. It's like locks on our doors, right? You can lock your door. Many of you locked your door when you came to church this morning. Maybe, I don't know, we're in rural Iowa, so maybe you didn't. But you can lock your door, and it will keep an honest person out, right? But if I show up at your house and I want in, I can get in within 10 seconds because I can just pick up a cinder block and throw it through your window. if I have no morals, I can get in. Right? And so you can't legislate that morality. It's just the way it is. And sometimes we want to impose rules maybe there's a better word, but we want to impose these rules, our moral law, on people that have no faith. And it just doesn't work. And God didn't do that either. Because he had this chosen people that were in captivity. But they didn't have this set of laws. There was no way that they could even try to be moral. They couldn't come together and say, maybe if we work really hard and follow these laws, God will get us out of here. Right? They didn't even have the laws. They were stuck there. They couldn't follow it if they wanted to, and they couldn't earn God's rescue. They couldn't say, well, let's work really hard, because rescue came first. See, that's important. Rescue came before the law. And it's the same today. God's laws, they don't apply to non-believers. You can't take them and say, well, if I follow these laws, maybe then I'll be good enough for God. No, the first step was God's. His first step is rescue. And he doesn't ask a bunch of questions. He doesn't evaluate us. He doesn't come in his lifeboat, and we're floundering in this world of sin, and he's got this life ring to throw out. He doesn't come and evaluate us and say, well, if you had taken the swimming lessons, then you would be worth saving, but you're drowning out here because you never even took the lesson. God doesn't say that. He doesn't say, why are you so far from shore? What are you doing out here? You don't belong out here. I wouldn't even need to come out here if you weren't out here. He doesn't come and evaluate and say, well, if you'd be wearing a more modest swimsuit, I might rescue you, but if you're like that, I'm not going to. No, rescue comes first. He comes with the life ring. He throws us the life ring with no questions asked. We're drowning in this world of sin, and all we have to do is grab it. Right? That's all we have to do. And then after he rescued the people, then he gave them the law. The law, the Ten Commandments were actually kind of an introduction to God of what's he like, what's his character. In Exodus 20, he starts out preceding the Ten Commandments. He says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. And just like with the Israelites, God's rescue comes first. God has an offer of salvation for anyone who believes, anyone that calls on his names. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's just up to us whether we want to accept it, whether we want to grab that rescue ring. And if we do, we'll be saved. If we do, we'll be rescued. And then after rescue, after bringing the people out of Egypt, God gave them the law. Rescue first, then the rules. And the law, these rules, they were an introduction to God, to a people that didn't know him. Right? They had known the Egyptian gods. They'd been there forever. Right? But they didn't know the true God. And even Moses, when he was in the wilderness and God spoke to him from the burning bush, Moses says, who do I say is sending me? He's like, these people, they don't know God. Who do I tell them? And so God brought the people out through this, miraculous miracles, miraculous events, and he introduced himself by giving them the laws, giving them the rules. But all these rules are, what are they for? They're there because they're good for us. They help us to see God. Imagine what our society would look like if we truly followed God's laws. Imagine how many marriages would be saved if no one committed adultery. Imagine what this place would be like if nobody lied, or if nobody stole, or if nobody was jealous of what other people have. Imagine how many homes would still be intact if we didn't lust after people or things. And the upbringing that kids could have if we all followed God's rules. But all of these things, they weren't a condition of rescue. Following the rules was not a condition. The rules were placed afterwards. It was rescue first, and then rules. And the rules are there for reasons, even if you don't understand them. The no swimming sign is because there could be some things submerged in the water. If it says no diving at a swimming pool, it's because the pool's not that deep. We all think, oh, we can dive, we can do it. And then someone like Joni Eareckson just tells us that no, you can't, that when you hit your head on the bottom of the pool, it has life consequences. That no diving sign was there for a reason. The rules about driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs, they're there not only to protect the person driving, but everybody else on the road or near the road. Right? The rules have a reason. And sometimes we look at God's laws and we think, well, those laws are stupid. Right? I'm going to make my own decisions. I'm going to do what I want to do. I don't need God to tell me what to do. But in reality, those laws are there to keep us safe. It's kind of it's like a goldfish. You have a goldfish bowl, right? Has some little gravelly stuff in the bottom. It has this nice little fake house or skin diver or plant or something in it. And every 2 or 3 days, somebody cleans the water. Right? You've got house cleaning taken care of. And twice a day, someone sprinkles some little flakes of goldfish food on top of the water, and you can go up and eat. Your food is provided for you. You've got a home, you've got clean water, you've got everything you need, right? And that goldfish is swimming around inside there, and he's looking out, and he sees you. And he's like, I want to be like that. I see the family sitting at the table, and they're laughing together. I want to join them. And the goldfish looks out later, and he looks out through the window, and the sun is shining. It's a beautiful day like today. And he sees the kids are out playing in the yard with the dog. They're running around playing tag. And the goldfish says, I want to be like that. So what does he do? He jumps out of the bowl. The goldfish had everything he needed. That glass bowl was his protection. The moment he jumps out, he's flopping on the floor and dying. Sometimes we're like that with God's laws. We're like, I want what's over there. I want to partake in that sin. I want to do something that God says, no, I want that. And it's deadly. It's deadly. But God rescued us, and then he gave us these rules to keep us safe because he actually wants to maximize our lives. He wants us to be in relationship. And he desires this relationship with us. And if we have a life full of sin, that relationship can't develop. We can't have sin, and so he's telling us what is sin. But these 600 laws, right? Didn't Christ come to fulfill the law? Yeah, he did. But no, there's various kinds of laws in the Old Testament. And I'm not advocating that we try to live under all the laws. Don't get me wrong. We are not under all the laws. But in the Old Testament, some of the laws were civil laws. Right? Because you had this group of people coming out of Egypt that had never been a country. And they didn't know how to operate. And so God gave them laws on how to operate as a community of people. Things to do, things not to do. You have to respect your neighbors. You can't take what's theirs. Right? We have most of those same laws today in our country. In most countries, actually. Most of those same laws are, in fact, how you operate as a group of people. And so many of God's laws were civil laws. And then he had a bunch of laws which were the sacrificial laws. What you have to do to approach God. What you have to do to cover your sin. What you need to do to be forgiven. And those, thankfully, are the laws that Christ did away with. Christ fulfilled. None of us go out and sacrifice a lamb, right? I mean, none of us are raising a lamb to take and sacrifice. We're not saying, oh, I don't have enough money for a lamb, but I can take a couple pigeons and do that. No, we are no longer under the law. The requirements have been met by Christ. But then there is another group of laws which are moral laws. And these are laws that outline these eternal principles of right and wrong. And the laws, they don't change. And the benefits of them is that it aids our relationship with Christ and with other people. And I think Christ still wants us to follow these laws because they bring us closer to him. They bring us into this deeper relationship with Christ, and not from a legalistic standpoint. It's like the goldfish. It's like there to protect us. It's like, this is what I want for you. And so God brought the people out of Egypt, and he rescued them. And then he gave them the laws. He gave them the rules because he wanted what was best for them. He knew that they needed some organization. He knew they needed this civil laws. He knew they needed these sacrificial laws because they weren't an upright people. But then he gave them these moral laws because he wanted to be in relationship with them, and he wanted them to be in relationship with each other. And so that brings us to this passage that I read this morning. These people, they had been in Egypt for longer than they could remember, for 400 years, for us going back to the Mayflower. Then they came out, and God gave them the laws, and then they ended up, because of disobedience, they ended up wandering around for 40 years. So 1985, right? I was in college. That's the amount of time that has passed since then. And so then, this is Moses' last hurrah. Moses knows he's about to die, and he reviews the entire law with the people. He goes through it again, and then he has this song that he has in the beginning of chapter 32. And we're going to pick up after the song and go through this once more. Starting in verse 45, it says, "After Moses finished reciting all these words to all Israel, he said to them, 'Take to heart all these words that I've given you as a warning today, so that you may command your children to follow all the words of this law carefully. For they are not meaningless words to you, but they are your life. And by them you will live long in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to possess.'" See, God is saying through Moses, he said, take heart of these words. Listen to them. Apply them. Obey them. And he gives them the reason. He says, so that. Right? So that. Do this so that. Follow them so that you can command them to your children. You can have your children, because this godliness is passed down, right? Our kids see us. Our neighbors see us. Our coworkers see us. They observe us all the time. Do these commands so that they see me in you, so that they can also see what I'm doing. He's saying, train your children to be morally upright. It's like a flashback to the beginning, back to Deuteronomy 6. And God, he's talking again through Moses. Moses says, "And these words I command you today, they shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk about them when you sit, and when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up." See, God wants us to remember. Remember our rescue. Remember the rules. And remember they're there to enhance our relationship. They're not meaningless. But just as he promised the Israelites that you will live long in the land if you follow them. If we, not as a nation, I'm not a nationalist. I spent too much time in other countries with other Christians to think that we've got a grip on it here. But as his people, as the worldwide church, if we are obedient to God, he will bless the church, because it will cause it to multiply, and that's what he wants. If we are faithful to his rules, he will multiply his church. And so we need to remember, rescue comes before rules that lead to relationship. God rescued us so we can be in relationship with him. And if there's anybody here this morning that needs rescued, if you feel like you are drowning in a world of sin, man, come talk to me or talk to Richard. If there's someone that's watching online, you can find us. We would love to help you grab a hold of that life ring that's being offered. And if you've been rescued, if you've accepted the gift of salvation, it's made available through Christ when he fulfilled that sacrificial law. If you've been rescued, then remember your rescue. Remember what he's done and share it. Share it with your family, with with your kids, and a lot of you, your kids have left the house by now, so share it with your neighbors. Share it with your coworkers. Share it with those that you encounter. But don't impose the rules. Right? The rules come after the rescue. We can't expect the person that doesn't know Jesus, that's not in relationship with Jesus, to live by the same standard that we want to live by. Right? It's not going to happen. Just point them to the rescuer. Right? We can show them the rescue ring. It's right beside them. All they have to do is grab onto it when they're ready to join the family of God. And then remember that just like Moses, he was reminding the Israelites, hey, that there's some rules here, but they're for your good. They're for to enhance our relationship, and they come after the rescue. They weren't randomly created to make our life miserable, but they're here to help us in our relationship with our rescuer, Jesus Christ, our Lord. I invite you to stand with me as we sing Jesus Calls Us, number 398.